Escaping the Fold by Vincent Merkel. The Beast in the Cove. Continued. The morning greeted me with a terrible headache. My eyes were strained and my thoughts were on the last night. I felt I was going mad. I know it might be tedious for you or any person to try to make sense out of the things that happened, but I lived them. And at that point, I thought I was daft from a blow to the head when the ship wrecked. When I opened the door to my refuge, I saw evidence of the beast's doing. Oh, he is a sick and crafty devil. I opened the door, and the light brightly cut through the damp misery of my enclosure. It was the first cloudless sky in the week that I had been stranded. I crawled out onto the beach, and as far up the coast as I could see were shark and fish carcasses strewn haphazardly on the sand and in the tide. The beach reeked of rot, as I had slept quite late and the sun beating down helped the process of decaying the mess of aquatic carnage. I surveyed the land I was on and for the first time witnessed a dense jungle at the foot of a massive rocky mountain that stretched as far to the east as I could see. It was tall and steep. To my west, the rocky cliff seemed to terminate into the ocean. I walked down the beach to secure some flesh, as my hunger was quite peaked at that point. Further down the coast, I found the dead body of a bull baboon. The primate had eaten of one of the sharks and died. I inspected the fish on the beach and found them to be the victims of some sort of poisoning. It explained the rapid decay of the corpses. Further east, there were rats and monkeys who suffered the same fate as their king, the bull baboon. The water was filthy with a green substance mixed with some red traces, like some vile mucus it hung in there. The serpent creature was real. He did this. He offered me a banquet, all right. He chewed every one of those fish and spit them out on the shore to punish me for denying him. I denied him control of my conscience, and he was full of wrath and laughter. I felt as though I was being watched. I looked out into the ocean again and noted the rocky outcroppings that dotted the horizon. Some were bigger than others, but as my eyes searched one particular rock set out in the blue, they were drawn into a shadow that was a cave. A flash of the twin blue lights in the deep of the cave caught my eye. They blazed hatefully at me as I stared into the faraway orifice, and the ants began to spell out their message. But before I could decipher it, the pain from a rot fly freeing his lunch from my thigh broke my trance. Maybe 30 of the fly's brothers were on my body looking for a meal. An onlooker might have thought I was dancing some bizarre aboriginal pagan dance as I jumped and swatted the blood-bloated insects from my person. At least half of them accomplished their purpose and fed well on me. To the west, I found a cove. I heard the demon laughing and cursing while he trashed the beach in the middle of the night, and it was evident that he could not cross that reef to spoil the sanctuary. His curses gave this idea credence. That is how I found the cove. There was a natural boundary from the cliffs and rocks that almost totally enclosed the wide inlet from the creature's path of destruction. A reef at the seaside of the entrance was covered in sharp and strange jagged amber crystals. They were brilliantly mesmerizing, and I thought that they should have some great retail value once I returned to society. Although water could pass through the reef, an extensive sand dune filtered out the monster's poison from the beautiful and lively spot. The cove was abundant in life and large enough to cause no fear of overfishing. I marveled at the clear water and colorful fish swimming in their naturally predator-free environment. Even from above, with fresh water that trickled in a promising rhythm into a pool below, the cliffs of the new abode welcomed me. The nature of the flow encouraged me to drink from the life-giving fountain and fully restored my constitution. Shielded by the rocks from the crafty dragon, with food and drink, I could plan for my survival and escape the lonely clutches of the sea. First, I easily speared a fat fish that was hiding in a crevice and filleted him with my pocket knife. I cooked half of the fillets on a flat stone centered over hot coals, and once my belly was full, smoked the rest of the fish in a mud and stone oven built over the stoked embers. I searched the western cliff face, overlooking my new haven, and spotted a cave a bit higher up that had a natural stairway. My mind played tricks on me, and I thought I saw a bright flash of reflected light high in the cliffs above the cave. I am no geologist, but my best guess is that the cave was limestone, about 13 feet deep, 6.5 feet high, and 18 feet wide. On one side, the floor dropped precipitously about 25 feet into a deep crevice, lined with sharp, upturned jags of black stone. The bottom of the pit was stained bright orange and black and was encrusted with the curious crystals that adorned the reef. The sea water slapped lazily in there and occasionally set forth a spray of salty brine that barely reached a quarter of the height of the chasm. On the other side of the apartment, it was shelved with stone that made a good place to organize my scarce belongings. Upon closer inspection of my new elevated home, there was evidence that I was not the first man to inhabit that sanctuary. The cave walls had holes in them about 10 inches deep with a 5-inch diameter, spaced at regular intervals in a grid across the back half of the shelter. Similar holes were augured about the perimeter of the entire mouth of the cave. I understood those indentions to be mortises of sorts that would be perfect for a wooden facade across the front of the hollow, and for posts and supports that would make for shelving on the back wall. I had first seen that type of construction carved into the faces of stone around the Acropolis and Athens, Greece. Venturing out of the hidden entrance to my cove, my mission was to retrieve the wood that I had used to build my fort in the dunes and bring my water containers and crate of office supplies back to my new residence before the sun went down. The only drawback to my new place was the inability to see any who might attempt to rescue me. But as the outer beach was rank with the stench of disease, rotten flesh, and the torturous flies, it was the only choice I had. It should be obvious that I wanted no further interaction with the strange and horrid thing that wandered the night's shores and claimed to be God. I did not see the unnamed creature on that excursion. It speaks and has a conscience of sorts, therefore it must have a name. But I would not dare to ask, just to get my mind scrambled in its trance. I was weary of the shadow and the rocks out in the deep of the waters. I would not cast my glance directly at it, and did my work under the assumption that I was probably being watched. I planned accordingly. Instead of coming directly out of the cove's entrance, I used the cover of the jungle to make a wide circle, so that the beast would always see me come from the east and leave to the east. I only ventured into those woods enough to skirt his sight, and found the walking easy on a game trail that had been worn from the padded feet of some jungle carnivore that left the scattered bones of what appeared to be a wild pig on the trail. The rains had washed away any prints that might have been drawn in the mud, and the sun had baked the mud hard enough to make tracking difficult. I was out to build my new home, and not to ponder the forest flora and fauna at that time, so I did not give it my full attention. The jungle bristled with life. Birds sang out the calls to their mates. Monkeys chattered in the treetops, and noises from unseen creatures bound to the earth with 4 legs occasionally reached my ears. I soon forgot that I was stranded, and worked as if I knew those roads and who and what my neighbors were. The Lord of the Jungle. That night I slept in such a way that it would have fooled the dead into believing I was amongst them, until early morning, when I dreamt of a sailing ship capsizing in the open seas. I did not belong in the scene, but there I was in the high winds and sweeping waves that hid great rocky jags that would open the hull of the strongest vessel. Upon hearing the shout of a man, a plea for help, and a great thunderous clapping of the titans of the turbulent sky, I awoke to a clear and lucid day. There were only enough clouds rolling through the sky to provide timely protection from the sun. It was a glorious day to be rescued, but as you very well may guess from my prolonged absence from society and you, that was not the day of my salvation. That would come much later, as I aged in the isolated region. I found out later that the creature had been communicating with the other crew members of the Telly. But once again, I should not get so far ahead of the story as to confuse your understanding of the nature of the beast and how one might defeat his foul purpose. It is important to note, however, that upon that morning I was wondering how the creature would know that there was a captain named Christos, and why he claimed that Christos owed him something. That thought was ever present in my mind, as was the fate of my crew members. I knew that I was living in dangerous times, not just because of the circumstances that I currently found myself beholden to, but because of the outside world. From coast to coast of every continent known to man, there was turmoil. War, disease, poverty, and despair were prevalent everywhere. It seems that the earth was going through a cycle. Floods covered certain shores, delivering hundreds of thousands of souls to their watery graves, while droughts in other areas revealed and exposed new and old strains of diseases onto unsuspecting cultures and tribes. There were still some bastions of goodness, that lasting beacon of hope and justice, the United States of America, stood as she does today, but even she was being systematically dismantled by some force that caused people to lie, steal, and deceive each other to reach their selfish ends. I realized that I needed to be rescued or act on my own to save myself. I knew there was a beast that was terrifying and would probably try to harm me. But most of all, I knew that if I were to be found, there was a good chance that my rescuers might be as hostile as the beast of the beach. My story might have changed depending on the authorities I might face, but then hunger set in, and I was anxious to explore my surroundings. As I pondered the seriousness of my situation, the clouds easily moved their cool, shadowy havens along my path, ushered on by a slight western breeze. I reached into the crate of papers, extracted the golden pen, and wrote on a clean sheet, "I am stranded on this beach. Please wait until I come back. I am looking for civilization." The stapler did its work to fasten the note to the makeshift door. I made 15 copies of the notes, stuffed them with my pen into an improvised machete scabbard, drank my fill of water, and folded the remainder of the smoked fish in a tied sleeve of what used to be my shirt. With spear in hand and high hopes, I set out. A quick glance at the fouled, sandy beach was enough to keep me from that route, so I would have to unravel the mysteries of where I was by traveling further into the jungle to find a path over the top of the mountain.